There's a very specific kind of silence that happens right after someone looks you in the eye, says, "Marry me," and means, for business. Not romance. Not desperation. Strategy. And step back. I'm the Hidden King opens on that exact vibe, high altitude, low oxygen, and two strangers quietly trying to outplay each other at 30,000 feet. I clicked expecting a loud, shiny rich guy power fantasy, and what I got in episode 1 was something I honestly found sneakier. Not subtle, exactly. But sneakier in how it frames control as chemistry and money as a love language you're supposed to learn to read. If you're new here, I'm talking to you like you're sitting next to me on the couch, because that's the whole point. This is Bongo Gaming, and I'm not here to hand you a Wikipedia recap in a hoodie. If you like reviews that actually have a pulse, hit subscribe real quick, no pressure, just helps the channel. And spoiler-wise, I'm going moderate. I'll talk about the big episode 1 turns and the emotional, what it means, but I'm not going to go hunting for late-game twists or pretend I know things the show hasn't earned yet. Episode 1 is basically a pressure cooker designed to introduce two people who both live in a world where no is just a negotiation opener. Arthur is positioned at first like he's just another well-dressed guy on a flight to New York, the type whose collar sits perfectly even when he's doing nothing. Then Anya shows up with that heiress energy that's half perfume, half steel. She's thrown tech, so, not just rich, but modern rich. The kind of wealth that thinks it's smarter than old money because it comes with an app. And she slides him an offer that's ridiculous on paper and somehow believable in the moment, a fake marriage to escape an arranged union. What I loved immediately is how the scene isn't played like a rom-com, oops we're stuck together, meet cute. It's played like a chess opening. There's an edge to it. Anya isn't asking because she's flustered, she's asking because she's cornered and she's improvising a weapon. Arthur refuses, and in most dramas that would be the end of it. He says no, she's embarrassed, we move on. But step back. Uses the refusal as a flex. He refuses the marriage, then turns around and upgrades her investment bid to $100 billion. And I just sat there like, excuse me? 100 billion? The number is so large it becomes a character choice. You're not supposed to treat it like realistic finance, you're supposed to feel the heat of it. That's the show telling you, in episode 1, this is not a grounded world. This is a world where money is a punchline and a threat at the same time. It's melodrama with a corporate gloss, and it knows exactly what it's doing. Here's the question that kept me leaning forward, why does he do that if he refuses her? Because on the surface, it's generosity. But the show doesn't frame it like charity. It frames it like ownership-adjacent curiosity. Like Arthur sees a person bold enough to propose a fake marriage to a stranger on a plane, and instead of laughing her off, he decides to test the limits of her ambition. That's not romantic yet. It's predatory adjacent. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. The first episode wants you slightly uncomfortable. It wants you to feel the imbalance. Arthur, in episode 1, is written as the kind of man who doesn't raise his voice because he doesn't need to. The power is in the calm. The refusal isn't rejection, it's framing. He's basically saying, you don't get to write the story. I do. And then he throws the $100 billion like a signature on the page. I'm not even saying he's a villain. I'm saying he's introduced as someone who treats the world like it's already his. Anya, though, doesn't come off as a helpless princess, and that's crucial. A lesser version of this story would make her purely a victim of an arranged union, pure heart, soft eyes, waiting for a savior. But episode 1 gives her teeth. Even the way she makes the offer is self-aware. She's not like, please marry me. She's like, this is a transaction and I'm choosing you. And that distinction matters. It gives her agency even when the scenario is extreme. Also, can we talk about the location choice? Starting on a plane is such a smart, slightly claustrophobic move. Planes are liminal spaces. You're not in your real life, you're not fully in the next one. That's why confessions happen on planes, and why proposals, real or fake, feel weirdly plausible there. You can't leave. You can't storm out. You can only sit in your seat and play the hand you're dealt. That's why the tension in that scene works without needing a car chase or a dramatic slap. And because we're not doing a dry scene-by-scene recap, let me tell you what stuck in my head: the way the episode uses public versus private like a weapon. On the plane, it's private power. Quiet power. Two people negotiating in a bubble. Then we cut to the other world, fiancés, gala lights, family expectations, and suddenly everything becomes performance. Serena dumping Arthur is one of those plot beats that could have been a throwaway, "oh no he's single now" convenience. But it hits harder because the episode times it after we've watched Arthur operate like a man who can bend reality with a sentence. Then Serena shows up and does the one thing money can't always prevent: she humiliates him emotionally. And I don't mean she destroys him, I mean she punctures the persona. If you've ever been broken up with in a way that felt like the other person was staging it for maximum impact, you know the exact flavor of humiliation I'm talking about. Not just heartbreak, disbelief. That, "wait, you're doing this right now" feeling. I'm not proud of how much I related to that beat. Not the billionaire part, obviously. But the part where you realize someone you assumed was on your team has been quietly auditioning for a different role in their own story. Episode 1 doesn't linger long enough to wallow, but the sting is there. And that's where Anya defending Arthur lands in a really interesting emotional pocket. Because we're trained, as viewers, to read that as romantic alignment. Oh, she stood up for him. She cares. But it's also strategic alignment. She sees a powerful man get publicly cut, and she chooses to step in, not just to be kind, but to place herself next to him in a moment where optics matter. She's not naive. She's learning the room in real time. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but is this show just going to be rich people being dramatic in expensive rooms? Episode 1 basically answers, yes, and then tries to make that feel like a feature, not a flaw. The grand gala sequence is where the show leans into its glossy fantasy. This is the part where the camera wants you to taste the champagne through the screen. It's all sparkle and hush, that weird rich person ambience where the music feels like it's floating above the crowd instead of coming from speakers. Let me paint the mini-scene the way it played in my head, because this is where step back. I'm the Hidden King understands spectacle. You've got the gala space lit like a jewel box, warm golds, polished surfaces, the kind of lighting that makes everyone's skin look expensive. The sound design pulls down the crowd noise whenever Arthur enters the frame, like the room is holding its breath. And then the reveal hits: Arthur isn't just some guy. He's Titan Group's CEO. It's not just the fact of the reveal. It's how it's delivered. The scene is staged like a trapdoor opening under the audience's assumptions. There's this delicious moment where you can almost feel the social hierarchy recalibrating in real time. Heads turn. Smiles tighten. People who were dismissive 2 seconds ago suddenly look like they're trying to remember if they've ever insulted him within earshot. And Arthur's expression, at least the way the episode wants you to read it, isn't gloating. It's controlled. Like, yes. Now you can speak to me properly. That kind of reveal is a classic trope. Hidden King, secret CEO, underestimated man. We've seen it in 100 dramas across 100 languages. What makes this one work, for me, is that episode 1 doesn't pretend it's surprising. It's satisfying instead. It's popcorn satisfaction, and the show leans into it with confidence. If you came here for that hit, the moment the room realizes they're in the presence of the person who signs their future, you're going to get fed. But let me give you my slightly contrarian take, because I think it makes the episode more interesting. The Hidden King thing is not the fantasy. The fantasy is that everyone accepts it immediately. In real life, power like that is messy. It's bureaucratic. It's slow. In this drama, the reveal works like a spell. People's attitudes shift instantly, and that's not realism, that's wish fulfillment. And I don't say that as a critique. I say that as a choice the show is making. It's choosing emotional truth over logistical truth. It wants you to feel what it's like to be underestimated and then validated so hard the whole room has to rearrange itself around you. Now, what really got me is what happens after. Arthur funds Anya. Again, the show uses money as action. Not talking, not promising, not flirting, funding. It's one of the central textures of the episode. These characters don't express intention through confession. They express it through capital moves. And in a world where everybody's trying to buy everybody else, choosing who you invest in becomes the closest thing to intimacy. So when Arthur throws that kind of support behind Anya, the question isn't, will they fall in love, yet? It's, what does he want? And the more important question, what does she want that she's willing to accept this? Because Anya isn't written as someone who doesn't understand the cost of being helped. The show is too aware for that. Every gift in a wealthy ecosystem is also a leash, unless you're very careful. That's why the final beat in the episode 1 storyline, Arthur and Anya choosing to build a new life together, hits with this mix of tenderness and danger. It reads romantic on the surface. New beginnings, fresh starts, two people aligning against the world. But if you listen to the subtext, it's also two people creating a third entity, a partnership, a unit, a brand. Something that can survive the social warfare they're clearly about to step into. And I know some of you are going to be like, dude, it's episode 1. Chill. I am chill. This is me chill. I really like when a drama gives me glossy spectacle and still leaves room for me to chew on character motivation without feeling like I'm inventing depth that isn't there. Episode 1 gives enough texture, enough little choices, to make the dynamic feel like it could go somewhere more complicated than, rich guy saves girl, girl fixes rich guy's heart. Here's another angle that surprised me, Serena dumping Arthur, structurally, is doing two jobs at once. It's clearing the romantic lane, sure. But it's also showing you that Arthur's power has boundaries. People can still reject him. People can still choose something else. And if the show is smart, which episode 1 suggests it might be, that rejection is going to be the splinter in him. The thing that makes him human, or makes him harsher. Because men like that, in dramas like this, don't handle, no, the way normal people do. They turn it into a mission. Anya's arranged union situation is also doing a lot of thematic lifting. It's not just a plot engine. It's the show's way of talking about how wealth can be its own prison. You can have every option except the one that matters. You can be surrounded by yes men and still feel like you're being traded. And that's why her fake marriage offer works as a character beat. It's her trying to hack the system using the system's own language. If marriage is a contract, she's going to draft her own version. Now, let's talk craft, because episode 1 is doing that thing where it moves like it's very aware of how people watch dramas in 2026. The pacing is brisk. It's not trying to slow burn you for 3 episodes before the hook. The plane, the offer, the refusal, the investment shock, the breakup, the defense, the gala, the reveal, the funding, the new life choice, this is a lot of plot for an opener. And normally I'd say that risks feeling like a trailer stretched into an episode. But here, it mostly works because the episode keeps changing the power dynamic. Every time you think you know who's in control, it tilts again. Still, if I'm being honest, there's a thin line between propulsive and rushed, and episode 1 tiptoes on that line with expensive shoes. Some emotional beats get brushed past because the show is hungry to deliver the next flex. If you're the kind of viewer who needs quiet aftermath, characters sitting with feelings, not just pivoting to the next event, you might feel a little emotionally yanked. I didn't mind it as much because the genre promise is pretty clear. This is a drama that treats momentum like a love language. The dialogue texture also tells you what kind of show this is. People don't talk like normal co-workers. They talk like they are always being overheard. Even the intimate conversations have that slightly heightened, polished bite, like each line is designed to be clipped for a short-form edit. And yes, that can be annoying when it feels unnatural. But it also fits a world where everything is negotiation and image. When you live around boardrooms and gala cameras, you don't get to speak casually. Casual is vulnerability, and vulnerability is leverage. And can I admit something mildly embarrassing? The first time the episode dropped the $100 billion number, I laughed. Not because it was bad, but because it was so committed. It's like the drama looked at realism, waved politely, and walked straight into fantasy. I respect the audacity. Sometimes you want a show that isn't trying to be your documentary. You want the emotional math. The "this is how it feels" math. What I'm really watching for, based on episode 1, is whether the show understands Anya's side of the power equation as well as it understands Arthur's. Because Arthur's arc is the easier one to sell. Hidden King reveals himself, gets wronged by a fiancé, finds a new ally, starts over. That's clean. Anya's is trickier. If she becomes just a passenger in Arthur's story, then the first episode's sharpness is going to feel like a tease. But if she stays written as someone with her own agenda, someone who can accept help without being swallowed by it, then this can actually be a fun, messy, character-driven ride. And the chemistry question is interesting too, because episode 1 doesn't give you a lot of soft romance. It gives you sparks in the form of challenge. The attraction is in the friction. The way they look at each other like they're assessing risk. I like that. I like when a drama doesn't confuse sweetness with compatibility. Sometimes compatibility is two people who can keep up with each other's contradictions. You know what moment I keep replaying, though? Not even the gala reveal. It's the little hint between Arthur refusing the fake marriage and still backing her financially. That choice is the thesis statement of their relationship. Refusal doesn't mean dismissal. It means renegotiation. And that's such a specific kind of dynamic, one that can become romantic, sure, but can also become toxic if the show isn't careful. Because the danger is that "he knows best" gets framed as love. Episode 1 flirts with that edge, and I'm curious whether it's going to interrogate it or just ride it. Visually, the episode leans into contrast. The plane is tighter, cooler, more intimate. The gala is wide, warm, opulent, and slightly unreal. The camera language feels like it wants you to feel how small people become inside luxury. You can be surrounded by beauty and still be cornered. And when the CEO reveal happens in that environment, it's like the frame itself bows. If you're watching for cinematography, it's not experimental, but it's purposeful. It knows when to compress space and when to open it up for spectacle. The music and sound design, at least in the beats we're given, do that modern drama thing where the score swells not to tell you what to feel, but to underline a power shift. When Anya makes her offer, the sound feels sharper, like a blade sliding out. When Arthur's status lands in the gala, the score feels like a curtain lifting. It's slightly on the nose, but again, this show isn't shy. It's not trying to be indie. It's trying to be addictive. Let me throw another question at you, because it's the one that makes episode 1 more than just candy. Is Arthur actually the romantic lead, or is he the setting? Think about it. Titan Group CEO. Infinite money. Instant influence. He's almost less a person and more an atmosphere, an environment Anya steps into. If the writing is smart, it will have to work to make him human, not just impressive. Serena dumping him could be the first crack. Anya defending him could be the first mirror. But the show has to follow through, because you can only do so many "I'm actually the CEO" moments before it becomes empty calories. And Anya, in contrast, already feels human because her problem isn't "I'm too powerful." Her problem is "I'm powerful, and it still isn't enough to own my own life." That's relatable. That's a real emotional engine. Even if you've never been an heiress, you've probably felt that weird thing where people assume you have freedom because you have resources, but the actual cage is expectation. Family. Image. Obligation. The arranged union is an extreme version of that, but emotionally it tracks. One thing I want to praise without overhyping, episode 1 doesn't waste time making Arthur seem nice. It makes him compelling instead. He refuses her proposal. He makes a massive financial move anyway. He reveals his identity like a guillotine dropping. The show is not begging you to think he's a cinnamon roll. He's a man of leverage. And if you've watched enough dramas, you know that's usually where the interesting character work starts, when a person used to controlling everything meets someone who forces them to renegotiate what control even means. Still, I'm not going to pretend there aren't weak spots. The episode is so committed to its power fantasy beats that some side characters risk becoming props. Serena, for example, in episode 1's framework, is more function than person. She's the blade that cuts Arthur free. Unless the show later adds dimension, she could end up being the classic cold ex-fiancé device. And I'm always a little allergic to women being used as narrative furniture in rich man stories. Not because every ex needs a redemption arc, but because flattening her into villain girlfriend is lazy when the drama is otherwise showing it can be sharp. But even that potential issue creates tension, because if Serena is written with actual motives, family pressure, corporate alliances, her own ambition, then the breakup isn't just a plot shove. It becomes part of the show's larger theme: love under capitalism. Love as merger. Love as betrayal. Love as PR. And that theme is already humming under the surface of episode 1, whether the drama admits it out loud or not. There's also something weirdly refreshing about how unapologetic the episode is about scale. New York-bound flight. Titan Group. Throne Tech Gala. $100 billion bids. It's like the show is saying, we are not here to whisper. And look, sometimes I want a soft slice of life drama where the biggest conflict is someone forgetting an umbrella. This is not that. This is a show where the umbrella costs more than my car and the rain is probably symbolic. The reason I'm spending so much time on episode 1's choices is because openers are promises. They tell you what kind of emotional contract you're signing. Step Back. I'm the Hidden King promises power games, high-stakes romance-adjacent partnership, and a world where identity is something you reveal strategically, not something you simply are. And it also promises a certain kind of viewer satisfaction, watching rooms flip, watching people regret underestimating someone, watching a woman find a loophole in a trap. But does it promise sincerity? That's the part I'm still listening for. Because you can have all the glitter in the world and still feel empty if the characters don't bleed a little. Not literally, relax. I mean emotionally. You need moments where the mask slips and it's not just another flex. Serena's dump gives us a glimpse of that. The question is whether the show will let Arthur sit in that discomfort, or whether it'll immediately patch it with power. And if you're wondering whether I'm worried the whole thing will become one long parade of, look how rich we are, I am, little. Because shows like this can get addicted to their own aesthetic. They start believing the suits are the story. The story isn't the suit. The story is why the person needs the suit. The story is what happens when the suit stops working. What I will say, though, is episode 1 already hints at a more interesting emotional geometry than the obvious reading. Anya doesn't fall into Arthur's lap. She collides with him. She offers him a role in her escape plan, he refuses, then he chooses a different kind of involvement. That's not a meet cute, that's a reroute. And reroutes are where drama lives, because they create unexpected obligations. They create debts. They create resentment and gratitude tangled together so tightly you can't tell where one ends. I'm also fascinated by the title itself, Step Back. I'm the Hidden King, because it frames the story as an announcement. Not a discovery. Not I became. It's I already am. That kind of title usually signals a certain swagger in storytelling. The main character isn't seeking power, is revealing it. And that makes the emotional stakes less about, will he succeed, and more about, what does this power do to everyone around him, including the woman who just became the most important variable in his controlled environment. So as we move past the opener's fireworks, the real test is going to be how the show handles consequence. If Arthur can drop $100 billion like a tip, then money can't be the main obstacle. If his identity can flip a room in 5 seconds, then status can't be the main obstacle. The obstacles have to get more intimate, more psychological, more relational. The show has to make the fight about trust, autonomy, and the cost of being saved by someone who's used to owning the terms of the rescue. And that's where my favorite tension sits right now. When Anya says, fake marriage, she's trying to control the narrative of her own life. When Arthur says no and invests anyway, he's trying to control the terms of her freedom. That's not just romantic. That's ideological. That's two versions of agency colliding, and if the writers lean into that instead of smoothing it into destiny, we could get something genuinely juicy. Because let's be real, the easy path is to turn Anya into a reward for Arthur after Serena leaves him. The interesting path is to let Anya remain a person with her own bargaining power, her own risk tolerance, her own line she won't cross. Episode 1 gives her the spine for that. It's there. You can see it in how she moves through scenes like she's aware she's being watched, and still chooses to act. And I keep circling back to that gala reveal, not because it's the biggest moment, but because it's the moment that defines the show's worldview. In this story, identity is currency. Names are currency. Titles are currency. And when Arthur reveals his, the room revalues him instantly. That's the world Anya is trying to survive in. That's the world she's trying to hack. So the romance, if it's going to be satisfying, can't just be, they are cute together. It has to be, they change each other's relationship to that world. Even in episode 1, you can feel the show flirting with the idea that their partnership is a new kind of kingdom. Arthur brings the established empire, the Titan group gravity. Anya brings the modern tech heiress edge, the willingness to rewrite the rules. Put them together and you don't just get romance, you get a power block. That's why it's compelling. It's not just two hearts, it's two strategies. And okay, yes, I'm aware of how dramatic I sound right now. I promise I'm not lighting candles and chanting, Titan Group, in my living room. I just think the opener has a strong grip on its own tone, and tone is everything in a show like this. If it winks too hard, it becomes parody. If it takes itself too seriously, it becomes exhausting. Episode 1 walks the line by playing the emotions straight while letting the scale be a little ridiculous. The last thing I'll say before we keep going deeper is about that final, new life together, choice. It's framed like a beginning, and it is. But it's also, quietly, a surrender. Not in a weak way. In a, we're done pretending we can do this alone, way. Arthur, freshly dumped, chooses alliance. Anya, cornered by arrangement, chooses alliance. And alliances are messy because they require compromise, and compromise is where control freaks go to suffer. Which brings me to the part I'm most curious about as the story moves forward, when the honeymoon phase of mutual usefulness fades. What happens when they want different things at the same time, in the same room, with the same stakes, and neither of them is used to losing, because that's the real engine of this kind of story. Not the reveal. Not the gala. Not even the money. It's the collision between two people who both think they're the exception to consequence. And I want to sit on that for a second, because the show is basically daring you to romanticize control. Arthur's control looks clean. It looks competent. It looks like safety if you've ever been the person who didn't have any. Anya's control looks scrappy, improvised, desperate but smart. Put them together and you get this delicious tension where you're not sure whether you're watching a love story or a takeover. Here's what I mean by takeover, and I'm not talking about hostile acquisitions, even though this show absolutely wants you thinking in that language. When Arthur upgrades a bid to $100 billion, the gesture is framed as support, but it also draws a circle around Anya. It's like he's saying, I'm in your story now. And the scary part is that people like Arthur don't step into stories they can't steer. So the romance fantasy isn't, he saved her. The romance fantasy is, he saves her and doesn't demand the steering wheel. That's the bar. That's the whole bar. If the drama is going to keep me fully locked in, it has to be brave enough to let Anya push back in ways that actually cost Arthur something. Not just cute banter. Not just a dramatic stare. I'm talking real friction. Real, I will walk away from your empire if you treat my freedom like a perk you gifted me. Because otherwise, it's not partnership, it's adoption. And I know, some viewers love that dynamic. I'm not here to shame anybody's taste. I'm just saying, the pilot is smarter than that, so I want the rest of the story to match the pilot's IQ. Now, acting-wise, the episode hinges on whether you buy Arthur's stillness. These roles live and die on micro-expression. If the actor plays him too blank, he reads wooden. If he plays him too smug, he becomes unbearable. Episode 1 finds this pretty satisfying middle lane. Arthur speaks like he's already decided the outcome, but his eyes keep doing this tiny recalculation whenever Anya doesn't react the way he expects. That's the crack. That's where chemistry lives. The show knows to keep the camera close enough to catch it, especially in those plain beats where you can't hide behind a crowd. Anya's performance, meanwhile, is doing a harder job than it looks. Because heiress with a problem can slip into one note so fast. Either she's the ice queen, or she's the damsel, or she's the quirky rich girl with trauma jewelry. What I liked in episode 1 is that her confidence has seams. You can see where she's performing bravery because she has to. When she offers the fake marriage, she's not fluttering, she's forcing herself to be bold. There's a difference. The voice is steady, but the body language is tight. Shoulders slightly held. Breathing controlled. Like she's trying not to show she's panicking. That's good acting direction, and it's also good character writing. And if you're wondering why I'm hung up on body language, it's because in shows like this, the dialogue is often too clean to carry the truth. Everyone speaks in quotable lines. So you have to look at the pauses. The half smiles that aren't smiles. The way a character decides whether to hold eye contact or break it. That's where the emotional reality leaks through the luxury. Let me flip the lens for a second, Serena. Even with limited screen time in the opener, Serena's breakup moment is doing something really precise in the story's emotional math. The show uses her to define what Arthur is not used to. And I'm going to be careful here, because with moderate spoilers I'm not going to pretend we have a full map of her character from one episode. But the breakup is staged in a way that makes Serena feel like part of that same rich ecosystem, where relationships are evaluated like investments. There's a coolness to it. It's not messy crying, it's decisive. And that's why it stings. It implies that Arthur wasn't loved in the way he assumed. He was selected. Then deselected. That's a theme I hope the drama digs into, love as selection. Who gets chosen, who gets discarded, and how much of that is personal and how much is just the machinery of wealthy families and corporate alliances chewing people up. Because arranged union on Anya's side and strategic engagement on Arthur's side? Those aren't separate plot lines. They are mirrors. They are both trapped in systems that treat intimacy like an asset class. And here's the question that makes it spicy. What happens when two people who've only known transactional love try to build something real and realize they don't actually have the muscles for it? That's not a will they kiss question. That's a can they be honest without losing power question. And that, to me, is the difference between a forgettable CEO fantasy and a drama that actually sticks to your ribs. Because right now, the show's biggest strength is that it doesn't pretend money solves emotion. Money solves access. It solves optics. It solves time. But it doesn't solve humiliation. It doesn't solve rejection. It doesn't solve the fear that you're only valued for what you can provide. Arthur can buy a room, but he can't buy Serena's choice. Anya can offer a marriage contract, but she can't buy her own freedom from family pressure without making a deal with a different devil. That's the tragedy hiding inside all the gloss. You want another angle that's easy to miss? The title's Step Back isn't just addressed to outsiders. It's also kind of addressed to the female lead. Like a warning baked into the premise. Step back, I'm the hidden king. The story is self-aware that it's about a man whose identity takes up space. So the writing has to be conscious of not turning Anya into the person who steps back. And this is where I get a little firm with my criticism. Even as someone who's enjoying the ride, the pilot already flirts with the idea that Arthur's dominance is inherently attractive. Which can be fun, I'm not made of stone. But it's also a trap for writers. Dominance isn't character development. Dominance is seasoning. The meat is vulnerability, contradiction, consequence. If the show keeps rewarding Arthur's control without ever forcing him to confront its cost, then the fantasy will start to feel hollow. The pilot is exciting, now I need it to be brave. Let's talk about the editing rhythm, because it's doing a lot of invisible work. Episode 1 cuts fast enough to keep the energy up, but it also knows when to hold. The plane negotiation gets held longer because it needs to feel like a duel. The The gala reveal gets held because it needs to feel like a coronation. That contrast is how you manipulate viewer adrenaline without exhausting them. You give them sprint, then you give them a slow-motion flex. It's very aware of modern viewing habits. It wants moments that clip well, but it also wants you to feel like you watched a scene, not just a highlight reel. But here's my little, lean-in moment for you. What if the most important relationship in this show isn't Arthur and Anya yet, but Arthur and the image of himself he's built? Because every Hidden King story eventually has to answer the question of why he was hidden. Not literally, like, why did he keep it secret, but emotionally. What part of him is protected by secrecy? What fear is he masking with status? Episode 1 gives you a crack with Serena's rejection. If the show follows that crack, we could get an arc where Arthur realizes he's been using power as insulation. And insulation feels safe until you realize it also blocks warmth. Now, about the visuals again, the show's color palette in episode 1 feels like it's intentionally selling you two worlds. The plane is cooler, more metallic, more in between. The gala is warm, gilded, almost syrupy. That's not just pretty. It's thematic. The plane is where people are honest because they're temporarily untethered. The gala is where people lie because the tether is the whole point. And if the drama keeps using environments like emotional metaphors, that's a great sign, because it means the directors are thinking in story language, not just location porn. Sound design deserves a shout too, because the show uses silence strategically. When Anya makes the marriage offer, there's this sense that the ambient sound drops a hair, like the world narrows to that question. It's not completely silent, but it's focused. When the gala reveal happens, the room sound swells just enough to make the social pressure feel physical, like you could get crushed by whispers. That's the kind of sonic storytelling that makes even a tropey reveal feel good. And yes, I'm aware I'm praising the sound design of a CEO reveal. This is who I am now. Let me live. One thing I want to flag, especially for newcomers, is that episode 1 sets expectations for scale, and that can be a double-edged sword. When you start at $100 billion and I'm the CEO, you've already played your biggest fireworks. So the show has to escalate in different directions. It can't just keep throwing bigger numbers at you. It has to get more intimate, more morally complicated, more emotionally risky. Otherwise it becomes like watching someone rev an engine in neutral. Loud, impressive for a minute, and then you realize you're not going anywhere. So where does escalation come from in a story like this, without me inventing plot you haven't seen? It comes from pressure. Family pressure for Anya. Reputation pressure for Arthur. The kind of pressure that doesn't care how rich you are because it attacks what you can't outsource: trust, identity, loyalty. The best version of this drama is not Arthur wins every room. It's Arthur wins rooms and loses people. Or Anya gains freedom and loses innocence. That's the emotional cost that turns a fantasy into a story. And I'm going to say something that might sound like I'm complaining, but it's actually me being invested. I want the show to let them be wrong. Both of them. Rich protagonists often get written like they are morally correct because they are competent. But competence isn't morality. Arthur can be brilliant and still be cruel. Anya can be brave and still be manipulative. If the show lets them both be a little selfish, a little scared, a little contradictory, then their bond becomes earned instead of destined. Here's a self-aware aside before I go deeper. Whenever a drama drops a fake marriage premise, a tiny part of my brain immediately starts calculating how long until the "we have to convince everyone" montage. And I'm not mad at it. I'm just, I see you, trope. I see you walking into my house with your shoes on. But that trope can be used well. Because a fake marriage is basically a lab experiment. It forces two characters to perform intimacy publicly while negotiating it privately. And that gap between public performance and private truth is where you can do incredible character work. Who touches first? Who flinches? Who overcommits to the performance because they are secretly craving the real thing? And who refuses because they are terrified of being owned? That's the meat. That's what I'm watching for. Now, I want to revisit the Anya defending Arthur moment, because it's easy to read it as simply, she's kind. And she is, in a way. But I think it's more interesting if you read it as Anya recognizing a vulnerability she can connect to. Two powerful people, both being handled by other people's expectations. Serena dumping Arthur shows that even he can be treated like a piece on a board. Anya sees that and, maybe for the first time in the episode, she's not alone in her cage. That recognition can be the beginning of genuine intimacy. Not attraction. Recognition. Oh? You're trapped too. That's big. And then the gala reveal flips the dynamic again, because it says, actually, his cage is made of gold and he has the keys. Which complicates that recognition. It's like the show gives you empathy for Arthur, then reminds you he's still the one with the nuclear codes. That's a clever emotional zigzag. It keeps you from settling into easy archetypes. What I also appreciate is that episode 1 doesn't make Arthur chase Anya romantically. He supports her materially. That's almost colder, and therefore more honest for who he is right now. He's not a man who knows how to court in a normal way. He courts with leverage. The show could either critique that or romanticize it, and I'm hoping it does a bit of both. Because the truth is, that kind of, I'll handle everything for you, energy can feel like love when you're exhausted. And it can feel like a cage when you finally breathe again. There's a line I kept hearing in my head while watching, not from the show but from real life, a gift is never just a gift. Episode 1 is basically built on that idea. The marriage offer is a gift, but it's also a demand. The $100 billion is a gift, but it's also a claim. The defense is a gift, but it's also a positioning. Everyone is giving, and everyone is collecting interest. So what would make their relationship actually healthy, in a story like this? It would require them to start giving without collecting. Or at least to admit the collection. To say, I'm doing this because I want you near me, and that scares me. To let the transactional language crack and reveal something messy underneath. That's the moment I'm waiting for, and I don't need the show to get there immediately. I just need it to know that's where the real payoff lives. Let's talk about the show's humor, because episode 1 doesn't lean comedic, but there's a wryness in the premise itself. A fake marriage offer on a plane is inherently absurd. A $100 billion bid is inherently absurd. The drama plays it straight, which is why it works. If it winked, it would collapse. But as a viewer, you still feel the absurdity bubbling under the surface, and that creates this fun tension where you're both indulging and slightly laughing at the extravagance. It's like eating a dessert that's too rich, but you keep going because it's good and you're already committed. Now, for critics in the room, the question you're probably asking is whether this is just a reskin of every Secret CEO web drama fantasy. And look, the bones are familiar. That's not an insult, it's a genre. The pilot doesn't reinvent the wheel. What it does is it polishes the wheel and then puts it on a car that moves fast. The differentiator will be whether it uses those familiar beats to explore something sharper about autonomy and power, or whether it just uses them to deliver dopamine. And I'll be honest, I'm a dopamine enjoyer. I'm not above a good, everyone bow down moment. But my love for that stuff is exactly why I'm picky about it. Because the best versions of these dramas give you the flex and then make you pay for it emotionally. They don't let the protagonist stay unscarred. They don't let money anesthetize the narrative. They let the fantasy be fun, and then they twist it just enough to make you feel something real. I mentioned earlier that I related to the rejection beat, and I want to expand that confession slightly, because it explains why episode 1 worked on me. There's a particular shame that comes with being blindsided. Not just sadness. Shame. Like you misread the room, misread the relationship, misread your own value. And even though Arthur is painted as this untouchable CEO god, Serena dumping him punctures him into someone who can be blindsided too. That's a very human crack, and it's the only reason I care about his emotional arc beyond, he's impressive. Because if the show stayed purely on the, he's a king, track, I'd watch it, sure, but I wouldn't feel haunted by it. The haunting comes from the idea that power doesn't protect you from certain kinds of pain. Sometimes it attracts them. Now let's zoom out to structure again. Episode 1 is doing the classic pilot job of stacking conflicts fast. Anya has an arranged union looming. Arthur has a relationship collapse. They meet. They align. The show doesn't waste time. That's great for hooking viewers. The risk is that it can underdevelop the emotional justification for them deciding to build a new life together so quickly. The episode sells it with intensity and spectacle, but as the series continues, it's going to need to retroactively deepen that choice. It needs to show you the quiet in-between moments that make their alliance feel like it's built on more than convenience. And that's not me asking for filler. It's me asking for intimacy. Not physical intimacy. Story intimacy. The little scenes where you learn what they eat when no one's watching. What they do when they can't sleep. How they react to kindness. Whether they can apologize. Those things are what make a partnership believable, especially when the stakes are absurdly huge. Here's a rehook for you. What if the show's real villain isn't a person, but the concept of being chosen by powerful people? Think about Anya's situation. She's being chosen for an arranged union. That's a trap. Then Arthur chooses her with money. That could also be a trap. So the story's tension could become, can Anya choose herself in a world that keeps trying to choose for her? If the drama commits to that, it becomes way more than a glossy fantasy. It becomes a story about self-ownership. Arthur, on the other side, might have to learn what it means to be wanted without being needed. That's a terrifying concept for a man whose entire value system seems built on being indispensable. If he can solve everything, then people stick around. If he can't, they leave. Serena leaving is the proof. So his arc, if the writing is thoughtful, could be about learning to be loved when he isn't performing power. Which is harder than it sounds, because power has been his personality armor. Now, one more craft note, the pilot set pieces are designed to be shareable. Plane proposal. Gala CEO reveal. 100 billion flex. That's modern drama calculus. But the show also sneaks in quieter psychological beats that aren't as clip-friendly, like the humiliation of the breakup, the complicated warmth of Anya defending him, the loaded nature of new life together. That balance is why I'm optimistic. It wants to be addictive, but it also wants to be felt. If I had to nitpick the pilot's weakest ingredient, it's that some motivations are still presented as dramatic facts rather than lived experiences. Arranged union is a strong hook, but the emotional texture of it, what it's cost Anya before this moment, has to be filled in later. Same with Arthur's engagement to Serena. We're told it exists, then it ends. The show will need to show us what that relationship meant to him beyond, a woman left me, otherwise Serena becomes a plot lever instead of a wound. And yes, sometimes dramas do that intentionally. They keep the pilot clean, they keep the backstory mysterious, and they unpack it later for maximum payoff. That can work. But the danger is that if you don't invest us in the past, the present feels like it's happening in a vacuum of emotion. Episode 1 is close to that edge. It doesn't fall off, but it peaks over. Another thing I'll be watching, and I think a lot of viewers will too, is how the drama handles the ethics of wealth. Not in a preachy way. I don't need a lecture. But when you're throwing around numbers like $100 billion, you're inviting a certain kind of scrutiny. The show can either treat that wealth like pure fantasy fuel, or it can occasionally let it feel heavy. Like it has impact. Like it changes lives beyond the main couple. The pilot mostly uses it as fantasy fuel, which is fine, but if later episodes sprinkle in consequences, it could elevate the whole thing. Because here's the truth, the secret CEO trope is fun because it's just as fantasy. It's, the powerful people who look down on you were wrong. It's revenge, but in a suit. If you're going to do that, I want it to be emotionally satisfying, not just visually satisfying. I want the show to earn the moments where people regret underestimating Arthur, not just hand them to him because he's rich. The pilot earns it partially through Serena's rejection, because it gives him a vulnerability that makes his power feel like compensation, not just entitlement. And as for Anya, her arc has the potential to be the real heart of the story if the writers lean in. Because the arranged union angle is basically a story about consent at a social level. She's being pressured into a life decision for other people's benefit. Fake marriage becomes a counter-consent. I choose my own contract. That's thematically rich. If the show treats it with respect and doesn't just use it as a romantic gimmick, Anya could become a genuinely compelling lead rather than just CEO's woman. It also gives the series the chance to explore how women in these worlds are policed differently. Arthur can be hidden and reveal himself when it's advantageous. Anya's identity is already public. Her value is already being negotiated by families and boards. She doesn't get to be hidden. So her power has to look different. It has to be social intelligence, resilience, strategic softness, calculated boldness. Episode 1 already hints at that. I want to see it become a full-blown skill set. And I'm not ignoring the romance, by the way. The romance is obviously the draw. But the romance in a story like this isn't candlelight. It's a look across a room that says, "Are you with me?" It's the moment someone chooses to stand beside you when it's inconvenient. It's the moment someone doesn't take advantage when they could. Episode 1 gives us the standing beside you moment with Anya defending Arthur. Now we need the doesn't take advantage moment, and that's going to be the real test of Arthur as a lead. Because let's keep it a buck, a man who can casually move $100 billion is also a man who can ruin you with a phone call. The romance only works if the show understands that tension and uses it responsibly. Not by defanging him, but by holding him accountable to a moral line. If he loves her, he can't treat her like an acquisition. If he does, then it's not romance, it's colonization with better lighting. You see why I'm obsessed? This show is fun, but it also opens doors to real conversations about power. That's my sweet spot. Now, if we keep thinking in terms of what the pilot sets up without inventing plot, we can anticipate the kinds of scenes the show will likely build toward. Not specific events, but types of confrontations. Public tests where their partnership has to look solid even if it's shaking. Private negotiations about boundaries. Family figures trying to reassert control. Corporate sharks sniffing out weakness. The tension between what they promised each other and what they owe their respective worlds. Those are the natural pressure points baked into episode 1. And what I hope the show avoids is the lazy shortcut where every obstacle is solved by Arthur's wallet. That's the easiest way to kill tension. You want to keep the wallet powerful, but not omnipotent. The real obstacles should be emotional and social, trust, reputation, autonomy, loyalty, fear. Those are harder to buy. That's where drama lives. I also want more moments like the playing scene, tight, intimate, two people verbally fencing. Because the gala is fun, but if the show becomes nothing but huge rooms and huge gestures, it'll start to feel like a music video. The playing scene worked because it forced the characters to face each other without distractions. If later episodes keep creating those pressure cooker spaces, the acting will shine and the relationship will deepen. And speaking of acting, the best chemistry in wealthy dramas often comes from restraint. Not from big declarations. From the things they don't say. From the way they hesitate before touching. From the way they choose words like they're defusing bombs. Episode 1 already has that flavor. The question is whether the show will keep that restraint, or whether it will panic and start spoon-feeding feelings too early. Because slow burn doesn't mean slow plot. It means slow emotional access. You can have a fast story and still keep the characters guarded. That's actually the ideal for bingeable dramas. Things happen constantly, but hearts open slowly. And I'll stop on one last thought before we roll further, because it's the kind of thought that makes me watch the next episode even when I know I should go to bed. The pilot's final choice, this new life together pivot, reads like liberation. But liberation is messy. When you break away from one system, you usually fall into another unless you build something truly new. So the real suspense isn't whether Anya escapes her arranged union. It's what she escapes into. And whether Arthur, the Hidden King, can build a kingdom with someone without demanding that she kneel in it, because the second she feels like she has to kneel, this whole glossy fantasy turns into a very different story, and that's where the drama either gets genuinely great, or shows its hand too early by making the power imbalance feel like destiny instead of something they have to fight against every day in the way they speak, the way they negotiate, The way they touch, the way they refuse, the way they stay, and especially in the moments when staying stops being convenient and becomes a decision that costs them something real, not just money but pride, comfort, identity, because when you've lived your whole life being chosen and choosing others like assets, the scariest thing isn't losing everything, it's choosing one person without a contract to protect you from what you feel and realizing you don't actually know how to do it. Choose one person without an exit clause. And that's why the pilot, for all its glitter and stunt numbers, is quietly setting up a story about emotional illiteracy. Not, they don't know feelings. They know feelings. They just don't know how to live with them without turning them into leverage. Because look at how both of them communicate in episode 1. Anya's first instinct is to draft a contract. Arthur's first instinct is to counter with capital. These are people who don't ask for things the normal way. They don't risk, I want. They risk, I propose. And that's romantic in a very modern, very twisted way. It's like intimacy has been reskinned as negotiation because that's the only form of honesty their world allows. If you're still with me, here's the thing I can't stop chewing on, the show isn't just saying, love in a rich world is hard. It's saying love in a rich world gets mistaken for strategy, and strategy gets mistaken for love, and everyone applauds because the optics look correct. That's why the gala matters. The gala isn't just a set piece. It's the thesis location. It's the church where everyone worships perception. And I want to dig into that gala sequence again without repeating myself, because there's a craft detail in the way it's staged that I think a lot of people will feel but not necessarily name. The reveal isn't framed as information, it's framed as atmosphere. The camera doesn't rush to show you a badge or a title card like, "He is CEO." It lingers on reactions. The social ripple. The micro-shifts. That's how you know the directors understand what power looks like in a room. Power isn't a fact, it's a behavior people adopt around you. You can watch it happen in real time. The show makes that the spectacle, not the business details. And that's why, even if you roll your eyes at the trope, it still hits. Because the satisfaction is social, not narrative. It's that moment where contempt turns into deference, and the show lets you savor the hypocrisy. It's petty. It's delicious. It's also kind of sad, if you let it be, because it means respect is conditional. And conditional respect is poison to any relationship trying to be real. Let me throw you a different question, because it changes how you read Arthur immediately. What if his hidden king persona isn't about humility at all, but about control over when he gets seen? Being hidden lets him choose the moment of revelation. It lets him choreograph the room. And if you've ever known someone who needs to control their image that tightly, you know it's rarely just confidence. It's fear of being misread. Fear of being rejected without the armor. Serena's breakup is the show's first proof that rejection can still slip past the armor anyway. And since we're talking about Serena, I want to do a mini-scene retelling of that breakup beat, because it's one of the few moments in episode 1 where the show's fantasy dips into something that feels uncomfortably plausible. It's not a screaming match. It's not melodramatic sobbing. It's cleaner than that. The lighting is usually brighter in these publicish scenes, like the world is too exposed. Serena's delivery is composed, almost clinical. And the camera, instead of giving you a big dramatic close-up right away, hangs just long enough to let you see Arthur's posture hold steady while something behind his eyes shifts. Like he's trying to keep his face from reacting faster than his pride can catch up. That's the kind of humiliation that doesn't look like a breakdown. It looks like someone swallowing glass and smiling anyway. That beat, for me, is what keeps Arthur from becoming a pure power fantasy statue. It's a bruise. It's an emotional bruise the show can press later, and it matters because bruises change how you touch. If Arthur carries that bruise into his partnership with Anya, it can make him clingy in ways that look like control. Or generous in ways that are actually anxiety. Or cold in ways that are actually self-protection. The pilot leaves all those doors open. Now, here's my second slightly contrarian take, and I say it respectfully because I know what genre we're in. Anya offering the fake marriage isn't inherently empowering. It's a gamble. It's a desperate move dressed up as agency. Yes, she's choosing. but she's choosing under duress. And sometimes, choice under duress is just a prettier cage. The reason it works as a compelling premise is that it's ethically messy. It's not a clean, girl boss moment. It's a young woman doing the best she can inside a rigged system, and that's different. If the drama later treats her offer like pure triumph without acknowledging the desperation beneath it, it'll flatten her. Because the emotional truth is, when you're cornered, you'll reach for the nearest tool. On that plane, Arthur is the nearest tool that looks like it could cut through a family arrangement. But tools have handles, and sometimes the handle is the part that cuts your palm. That's what makes me curious about how the show will treat the relationship's early imbalance. Arthur has money, status, and the ability to make decisions that ripple outward. Anya has urgency and intelligence and, importantly, a public name that carries value too. She's not nobody. She's thrown tech. That's her leverage. And the show needs to keep reminding us that she's not just rescued, she's also an asset in the political sense. Otherwise the partnership loses its complexity. If you're watching as a newcomer, here's what I think the pilot is secretly asking you to pick a side on. Do you believe love can exist in a relationship that begins as transaction? Some viewers will say yes, absolutely, because love isn't about how it starts, it's about what you choose later. Some viewers will say no, because the foundation shapes everything. The pilot doesn't answer yet. It just sets the stage and dares you to keep watching to see which philosophy wins. And I'll admit, as someone who's watched way too many dramas with fake marriage, bones, I tend to side-eye the early episodes when they rush the alliance without building enough emotional glue. But this opener gets away with it because it's not pretending the glue is romance. The glue is mutual need and mutual curiosity. That's more honest. That's also more volatile. Need fades. Curiosity gets satisfied. Then what? The other craft element that impressed me in episode 1 is how it uses public defense as a currency. Anya defending Arthur after Serena dumps him isn't just about kindness. It's about narrative control. In high society settings, whoever speaks first after a humiliation shapes the story that spreads. Anya speaks. She frames him. She doesn't let Serena own the moment. That's power. And it's a different kind of power than Arthur's. It's social power. Emotional power. The ability to redirect attention without money. That's why I don't buy the reading that Anya is simply swept up by Arthur's wealth. Episode 1 positions her as someone who understands the game and wants to be a player, not a prize. The real romance, if it works, will be in Arthur learning to respect that kind of power. Not just admire it. Respect it. Let it stand beside his without trying to absorb it. You want a rehook that gets to the heart of the show's potential? Imagine the moment when Anya realizes Arthur's help comes with invisible expectations, and she has to decide whether love is worth negotiating for. Not accepting. Negotiating. That decision, if the drama ever gives it to her in a real way, is where the story could punch way above its trope weight. Now, I also want to talk about pacing in a more tactile way. Episode 1 moves like a pilot that's terrified you'll click away. Which, in 2026, is fair. Everyone's thumb is itchy. But there's a trade-off. When a pilot stacks this many high points, it creates a kind of emotional inflation. You get used to fireworks. That means the show later has to either keep escalating spectacle, which becomes exhausting, or pivot into deeper character stakes, which is harder but far more satisfying. My hope, based on the small cracks we already saw, is that it pivots. The editing already hints it can. Those held shots on faces in the plane scene, the deliberate reaction shots at the gala, the way the breakup isn't cut like an action beat, it suggests the director knows when to slow down for emotion. That's promising. It means they're not just chasing clips. They are chasing moments. Dialogue-wise, I'm curious how the show will evolve. Episode 1 dialogue is crisp, slightly heightened, and heavy on statements that feel like moves. That fits the world. But if every episode stays in that register, it can start to feel like everyone is permanently giving a press conference. The best dramas like this learn when to let characters speak poorly. Stumble. Say the wrong thing. Apologize without sounding like a contract. If Arthur and Anya never get to be awkward, their relationship will stay shiny and distant. And yes, I'm advocating for awkwardness in a billionaire fantasy. That's where we're at. Awkwardness is intimacy. Awkwardness is where people stop performing. Another thing that's worth talking about is how the show frames new life together. That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It sounds romantic, but it's also an identity rewrite. Who are you when you leave the role you were assigned? Arthur as the fiancé. Anya as the arranged bride-to-be. They're both stepping out of scripts other people wrote. That's inherently compelling. It's also terrifying, because when you step out of a script, you don't always know who you are without it. This is where my personal reaction gets a little raw again, because I've been in situations, not remotely this glamorous, where you realize you've been living inside someone else's expectation so long that leaving them feels like free fall. Even when leaving is the right thing. Episode 1 captures a hint of that free fall in Anya's urgency. There's a frantic intelligence to her offer. That's what makes her feel real to me. She's not playing the game because she loves it, she's playing because she has to. Arthur, by contrast, looks like someone who loves the game. Or at least loves winning it. That difference can create real friction later. Anya wants out. Arthur wants control. If the show is smart, it will force Arthur to choose between controlling the situation and respecting Anya's desire to not be controlled. And here's where I think the titles, Step Back, can become ironic. Because who is being told to step back? The world? Serena? The families? Or Anya? If the show accidentally positions Anya as someone who has to step back to let Arthur be king, it will betray its own most interesting possibility. But if the show eventually flips it, if Anya is the one who says, step back, to the systems trying to own her, then the title becomes hers too. That would be satisfying. That would make the Hidden King concept less gendered and more about agency. Let's talk about the wealth fantasy itself for a second, because I don't want to pretend this show is something it's not. It's meant to be glossy. It's meant to be aspirational in the aesthetics. There's pleasure in watching characters move through spaces you'll never enter. There's pleasure in the fashion, the architecture, the lighting that makes everything look like it costs more than your rent. And the show knows that pleasure is part of its appeal. But what I love is when dramas use that pleasure to smuggle in critique. Not a lecture. A feeling. Like the feeling that the gala room is beautiful and suffocating at the same time. Like the feeling that a $100 billion bid is impressive and vaguely obscene at the same time. If the show keeps that double feeling alive, if it lets you enjoy the fantasy while still sensing the emptiness under it, then it becomes richer than the average Secret CEO ride. Because right now, the $100 billion number works as shock and awe. Later, it should work as a question mark. What does that kind of money do to a person's ability to hear no? What does it do to your sense of reality? What does it do to your relationships, when everything can be solved by writing a check except the one thing you actually need, someone choosing you freely? That's the emotional thesis I'm hoping the writers lean into. And I'm not asking the show to become bleak. I like fun. I like spectacle. I like a good, everyone in the room regrets it moment as much as anyone. I just want the spectacle to have a pulse underneath it. Now, I also want to highlight a subtle strength in episode 1, it doesn't over-explain the corporate world. It uses corporate language as texture, not content. That's smart, because most viewers aren't here for a finance seminar. They are here for status as drama. The show understands that. Titan Group and Throne Tech aren't meant to be deeply realistic corporations, they are mythic entities. Their names are shorthand for power. That keeps the story accessible and propulsive. But it also means the show needs to be careful not to make everything too convenient. When money is mythic, obstacles can feel fake. The way to avoid that is to anchor the conflicts in emotion and relationships, not in whether a deal closes. The plane scene worked because it wasn't about a pitch deck, it was about desperation, curiosity, and a test of nerve. Speaking of tests of nerve, episode 1 is full of them. Anya tests Arthur by making the offer. Arthur tests Anya by refusing and then investing. Serena tests Arthur by walking away publicly. Anya tests the social room by defending him. Arthur tests the entire gala by revealing himself. It's a chain of tests. That's why the episode feels like a duel that keeps changing weapons. So here's the rehook that matters to me as a viewer. At what point do they stop testing each other and start trusting? And how will the show make that trust feel earned instead of inevitable? Because trust is boring if it's automatic. Trust is electric when it's hard. Now, let's get a little more granular about the performances again, because it's easy to talk about writing and forget that these stories live in faces. Arthur's performance, at least in the pilot, is all about control of breath. That sounds like a weird detail, but watch how often he seems to inhale slowly before he speaks. It's like he's choosing calm the way other people choose words. That's a character trait. A man who regulates himself because he's always being watched, even when he's hidden. The moment Serena dumps him, that regulation flickers. Not dramatically, but enough. And that flicker is the whole reason I'm interested. Anya's performance, in contrast, is about velocity. She moves slightly faster than the room wants her to. Not frantic, but urgent. Her mind is always a step ahead, and you can see her scanning. When she defends Arthur, it's like she's making a split-second calculation and then acting on it before she can second-guess herself. That kind of decisiveness reads as charisma. It also reads as survival. And if you put those two performance styles together, Arthur's controlled stillness and Anya's strategic velocity, you get chemistry that isn't just, they look good together. You get a dynamic where each one has something the other lacks. Arthur can slow the chaos. Anya can puncture the stagnation. If the show keeps letting them influence each other, the relationship can actually feel like growth instead of just attraction. I also want to mention the camera's relationship to Anya versus Arthur, because pilots often reveal unconscious bias in framing. Episode 1 mostly frames Arthur like a monument, symmetrical shots, confident angles, the kind of composition that makes him feel inevitable. Anya gets more kinetic framing, closer, slightly more movement, more emphasis on reaction. That can be a good thing, it makes her feel alive. But it can also subtly reinforce that he's the stable center and she's the orbit. The show will need to keep an eye on that if it wants Anya to feel like a co-lead rather than a catalyst. Now, not to get too film student about it, because I can feel myself drifting into that mode and nobody subscribed for my dissertation, but framing is storytelling. Who gets centered, who gets the hero angle, who gets to be still in the frame without being punished for it? Episode 1 is already good enough that these details matter, because it means the show is playing at a level where visual language is part of the seduction. Let's circle back to the emotional heart again. The pilot ends with this sense of forward momentum, they are building a life together. And the immediate instinct as a viewer is to ship it, to root for them against the world. But I think the more interesting route is to hope they don't lose themselves inside each other. Because new life together can either mean liberation or replacement. Instead of Anya being owned by her family, she becomes owned by Arthur. Instead of Arthur being defined by Serena's rejection, he becomes defined by Anya's approval. That's not love. That's dependency with better branding. So the best version of this drama, for me, is one where their partnership becomes a platform for selfhood rather than a substitute for it. Where Anya becomes freer, not smaller. Where Arthur becomes softer, not more controlling. Where money becomes a tool, not a personality. And I'm going to be honest about what I loved in episode 1 as a viewer. Beyond all the analysis, it's just fun to watch people be decisive. There's something satisfying about a show where characters make big choices and commit. No endless dithering. No 5 episodes of, will I tell him? Anya makes the offer. Arthur makes the investment move. Serena makes the exit. People act. That creates momentum. It makes you feel like you're watching a story, not waiting for one. But that decisiveness can also hide emotional avoidance. Acting fast is sometimes a way of not feeling. And both Arthur and Anya strike me as people who act fast to avoid sitting in the discomfort of what they actually want. Which is why I keep saying the show needs to slow down emotionally even if it keeps moving plot-wise. Here's another thing that hooked me: the pilot's tone is confident without being smug. It knows it's delivering a fantasy, but it doesn't apologize for it. It doesn't undercut itself with constant jokes. It plays the stakes straight. That's what allows viewers to invest. Because if the show starts laughing at itself, you stop caring. Episode 1 respects its own world enough to make you respect it too, even when the numbers are absurd. Now, what about the weak spots that might bug critics more than casual viewers? The biggest one is plausibility of escalation. When you jump from refusal to $100 billion in one episode, you're not just raising the stakes, you're compressing what would normally be an arc into a beat. That can make the storytelling feel like it's skipping steps. Some viewers will love the speed. Others will feel emotionally unmoored because the relational foundation hasn't been built yet. Both reactions are valid. The pilot is choosing adrenaline over gradualism. There's also the risk of archetype writing. Arthur as the untouchable hidden king. Anya as the heiress trapped by tradition. Serena as the cold ex-fiancée. These are archetypes. Archetypes aren't bad, they are the language of melodrama. But they become boring if the show doesn't complicate them. Episode 1 hints at complications: Arthur's bruise, Anya's urgency and intelligence, but it's still early. The show has to do the work later. It can't just ride the archetypes like a conveyor belt. And the show absolutely knows the audience it's courting. It's courting viewers who love power reversals, status reveals, and romance that feels like an alliance. It's courting fans of that "everyone thought he was nobody" satisfaction. If that's you, episode 1 is basically a tailored suit laid out on the bed, begging you to try it on. But for viewers who come in skeptical, like, this is going to be trope soup, the pilot's job is to give you enough craft and emotional texture to respect the execution even if you've seen the ingredients before. And I think it does. Not perfectly. But enough. The playing scene has tension. The breakup has sting. The gala has spectacle. The defense has a spark of moral choice. It's not empty calories. It's at least calories with seasoning. Let me give you one more rehook that I think matters if you're deciding whether to continue. What if the real, hidden king, twist isn't that Arthur is the CEO, but that Anya is the one who ends up controlling the narrative of their relationship? The pilot sets Arthur up as the king, sure. But Anya's the one making bold moves first. She's the one offering the premise. She's the one defending him socially. There's a version of this story where Arthur's wealth is obvious power, but Anya's intelligence is the power that actually wins. If the show goes that direction, it could become a lot more satisfying than a standard CEO fantasy. And I'll say this plainly, the pilot made me want to watch Anya more than Arthur. Arthur is intriguing, but he's also predictable in his archetype. Anya is where the unpredictability lives, because her choices have more immediate moral stakes. She's navigating coercion. She's improvising. She's risking humiliation by making that offer. She's risking judgment by defending Arthur. She's risking entanglement by accepting his support. That's a lot. That's story. If the show keeps honoring that, it'll earn loyalty from viewers who want more than just a shiny male lead. Now, I know you asked for the final part, and in a normal world I'd be sliding into the verdict and the "should you watch" wrap-up right about now. But I'm not there yet emotionally, and honestly, the story itself isn't either. Because the pilot is an opening gambit. It's a promise. It's the handshake before the deal. The real review, the one that sticks, has to wrestle with what the show becomes when it can't rely on the opener's fireworks anymore. So let me keep digging into theme, because that's where the pilot is already whispering bigger ideas. One theme is visibility. Arthur is hidden until he chooses to be seen. Anya is seen whether she likes it or not, because heiresses don't get privacy. That's a gendered tension. The male lead controls visibility, the female lead is controlled by it. A fake marriage, ironically, is Anya's attempt to control how she's seen. If she can't escape being watched, she can at least choose the costume. That's tragic and clever at the same time. Another theme is consent, and it's not just about marriage. It's about consent in social systems. Serena's breakup is a kind of consent withdrawal. Anya's arranged union is a consent threat. Arthur's investment is consent complicated, because when someone offers you that level of support, it can overwhelm your ability to refuse. The show is playing in that territory even if it doesn't say the words. If it continues to play there intentionally, it can create real emotional complexity. Then there's the theme of identity as performance. Gala culture is performance. Corporate culture is performance. Even romance becomes performance when it's public. Anya defending Arthur is a performance with real feeling underneath. Arthur revealing himself is a performance with real consequence underneath. That interplay between performative and genuine is where a lot of great melodrama lives. And that's why episode 1 works as an opener. It's basically a series of performances that reveal truth anyway. I also want to talk about the show's title as marketing versus text. Step back. I'm the Hidden King is obviously meant to sound punchy, memeable, clickable. It's a title that already feels like a quote. That can be cheesy. But it also signals that this drama is comfortable being a little extra. And I appreciate that. Because when a show is extra but self-possessed, it can be very entertaining. The danger is when extra becomes lazy. Like when the writing relies on shock numbers and instant deference without building emotional logic. The pilot walks close to that line, but doesn't fully cross it because it gives you human moments amid the fantasy. Serena's breakup. Anya's tension. Arthur's recalculations. Those moments are the rope pulling it back from pure cartoon. Now, one more confession, since I'm already being honest, I'm a sucker for stories where someone publicly reveals a truth that forces everyone to re-evaluate their cruelty. I know it's petty. I know it's not the highest art. But it taps into something real, the desire to be respected without begging for it. The desire to have your value recognized after being dismissed. That's why these Hidden King stories exist. They are revenge fantasies for anyone who's ever been treated like they don't matter. But the best revenge fantasies evolve into something more, a question about whether recognition fixes anything, or whether it just changes who's allowed to hurt you. If the show goes deeper, it might end up being less about Arthur humiliating a room and more about him realizing that rooms will always change their faces depending on what you can offer. And that's lonely. That's the part that could make this story surprisingly emotional if it chooses to. And I think the pilot gives enough hints that it might choose to, because it already shows that Arthur's power doesn't prevent heartbreak. It doesn't prevent rejection. It doesn't prevent being used. That's an opening for actual vulnerability. So, what do I need from the next stretch of the drama to keep my love alive? I need the show to give us scenes that don't resolve with a check. I need it to let Anya say no and have that no be respected. I need Arthur to face a consequence he can't buy away. I need Serena to be more than a cardboard antagonist, if she continues to matter. I need the arranged union pressure to feel like a real social machine, not just a vague threat. And I need the romance to feel like two people learning how to speak without armor. That's a lot, sure. But the pilot asked for a lot too. It came in swinging. If you come in swinging, you're inviting me to expect a fight worth watching. And because this is Bongo Gaming, let me speak directly to the viewer who clicked this review because you're on the fence. If you like the first episode's vibe, the plain tension, the audacious investment flex, the gala reveal, and you're the type who watches dramas for momentum and spectacle with a side of emotional bruises, you're probably going to have a good time. If you need slow burn realism, small-scale conflict, and deeply grounded financial logic, you might want to adjust your expectations immediately, because this show is not trying to be your reality. It's trying to be your adrenaline. But even adrenaline can have meaning. That's what I'm saying. Now, let me keep going deeper into the relationship dynamic itself, because it's the most important craft challenge the writers have in front of them. A fake marriage premise creates instant intimacy. That's its strength and its weakness. The strength is you get to put characters in high-pressure, couple situations quickly. The weakness is that it can feel unearned if the emotional closeness doesn't develop alongside the situational closeness. So the writers have to craft a slow emotional reveal inside a fast situational bond. That's a delicate balancing act. And episode 1 sets it up well because the characters don't feel emotionally close yet. They feel strategically aligned. That's believable. Now the show has to transition from aligned to attached without making it feel like a switch flipped because the script said so. That transition will depend on moments of choice. Not grand gestures. Small choices. The kinds of moments that aren't glamorous: waiting, listening, defending someone when it doesn't benefit you, admitting fear, asking before assuming. Those are the moments that make a relationship feel real even in a fantasy world. Arthur's greatest romantic obstacle, in my opinion, isn't Serena or the world. It's his reflex to take over. If he keeps solving Anya's problems without letting her steer, the romance will start to feel like possession. And Anya's greatest obstacle isn't the arranged union. It's her reflex to use people as tools to escape. If she keeps treating Arthur as a ladder and not a person, the romance will start to feel exploitative. The interesting thing is, both of those flaws are understandable given their worlds. That's why they are compelling. They are not villains. They are trained by their environments. So the love story, if it lands, will be about retraining. Unlearning. That's the good stuff. And one more craft thing I want to mention is how the show can use repetition as escalation. Not repeating plot, but repeating motifs, offers, contracts, bids, public rooms, private negotiations. Each time you repeat a motif, you can deepen it. The first offer is fake marriage on a plane. Later, maybe the offers become emotional. The first bid is money. Later, maybe the bid is trust. The first public room is a gala. Later, maybe the public room is family. The show can keep its identity while raising stakes, if it's smart about motif progression. Episode 1 already has that structure: offer, counter, humiliation, defense, reveal, funding, alliance. It's a pattern. Patterns are what make melodrama addictive, because you start anticipating the rhythm. The danger is predictability. The solution is to break the pattern at the right moment. Give the viewer what they expect twice, then disrupt it the third time. That's how you keep a trope-driven show feeling alive. And I'm going to stop here for now, not because I'm wrapping up, but because I want to pivot into a specific point about why the pilot's emotional tone works even when the plot is outrageous, and that point hinges on something very small: the way episode 1 treats embarrassment. Embarrassment is usually played for comedy or ignored. Here, it's treated like a real wound. Serena's breakup is embarrassing. Arthur being publicly corrected by life is embarrassing. Anya having to propose a fake marriage is embarrassing, even if she's brave. And the show doesn't fully play those moments for laughs. It lets them sting. That sting is what makes the characters feel like they exist beyond the fantasy surface, because if you can feel embarrassment, you can be hurt by other people's eyes, and once you're hurt by other people's eyes, you're no longer a cartoon king or a glossy heiress, you're a person trying to survive a world that watches you like entertainment. And that's where the drama can get genuinely sharp if it keeps following that thread into the moments where the cameras aren't flashing and the rooms aren't gilded and it's just two people sitting with the consequences of what they've done, realizing that power can get you into any room but it can't tell you what to say when the door closes and you're alone with someone who might actually see you, and that someone might actually see you idea is, to me, the most compelling threat the pilot plants. Not the arranged union. Not Serena. Not the rival executives we can all smell coming from a mile away. The real threat is intimacy. The real threat is being known. Because if Arthur is the kind of man who can buy silence and manipulate rooms, then the one thing he can't completely control is what someone feels after they've looked past the suit. And if Anya is the kind of woman who's learned to stay 2 steps ahead just to survive her own last name, then the one thing she can't easily tolerate is being still long enough for someone to read her. That's why I keep coming back to embarrassment as a narrative tool here, because embarrassment is basically the moment your mask slips in public. It's involuntary exposure. And in episode 1, both leads get touched by it in different ways. Arthur's embarrassment is the shock of being dismissed. Anya's embarrassment is the audacity of needing help and having to ask for it in the most extreme way possible. These are not cute embarrassments. They are identity-level humiliations. And when the show lets those moments breathe, even briefly, it earns a weird kind of intimacy with the viewer. You're not just watching rich people be rich. You're watching rich people get punctured. There's a lot of dramas in this lane that avoid puncturing the leads because they are scared it'll reduce the fantasy. This pilot isn't scared. It punctures them early. Not enough to break the fantasy, but enough to make the fantasy feel like it has stakes. That's why the gala reveal feels like release. It's not just, he's the CEO. It's, he gets to regain the control Serena stole. And that's psychologically coherent. That's a story beat you can feel, not just understand. Now, the place where this gets dangerous, narratively, is if the show starts treating control as healing. Because control is not healing. Control is coping. Control is what you do when you're terrified. And in a world like Arthur's, where control is rewarded constantly, it's easy for the story to accidentally frame his most unhealthy impulse as his most romantic trait. The pilot hasn't done that yet, but it's flirting with the edge. You can sense the temptation, the show wants you to swoon at his power. That's fine. But it also has to make space for the idea that his power can be suffocating. Here's the reason I'm so hung up on that: Anya's entire opener is about escaping suffocation. An arranged union, no matter how you dress it up, is suffocation if it's not her choice. So if she escapes one suffocating system only to land in a relationship where Arthur's help becomes another form of control, the story turns from romance to tragedy without even changing its lighting. It just changes how you interpret the gestures. So if I were in the writer's room, the main thing I'd be protecting is Anya's ability to refuse. Not just refuse the arranged union. Refuse Arthur. Refuse the terms. Refuse the narrative when it stops serving her. That doesn't mean she has to leave him every other episode. It means she has to have boundaries that the story treats as legitimate, not as obstacles to be bulldozed by a grand gesture. And on the flip side, I'd be protecting Arthur's ability to be refused without retaliating. That's how you show growth. Not by making him less powerful, but by making him less threatened by other people's autonomy. Episode 1 gives you the seed of that, weirdly, in the plane scene. He refuses the marriage proposal, but he doesn't humiliate her for asking. He doesn't expose her. He doesn't treat her desperation as weakness. He treats it as information. That's cold, yes, but it's also a form of respect in his world. He sees her as a player, not a toy. That's a strong starting point. You know what's funny? A lot of viewers will probably read that $100 billion upgrade as pure romantic foreshadowing, like he's already falling for her. I don't. Not yet. I read it as fascination and control. Like he's placing a bet. It's not, I love you. It's, I want to see what you do with this. That's more interesting to me than instant love, because fascination is unstable. Fascination can turn into obsession, admiration, rivalry, protectiveness, resentment. Love tends to be slower. Fascination is immediate. And the pilot feels immediate. What I'm saying is, the show is more exciting if you assume they are not falling in love yet. They are falling into a dynamic. A pattern. A shared orbit. And then love has to be built inside that orbit. That's where the drama can get layered. Let's talk about the show's sense of place again, because it's doing something that feels almost like a magic trick. It makes the plane feel intimate even though it's a public space, and it makes the gala feel alien even though it's crowded. That's a directing choice. Intimacy isn't about being alone, it's about being emotionally cornered. The plane corners them. The gala, in contrast, dilutes everyone. People become silhouettes and status markers. The only thing that makes you visible there is power. That's why Arthur's reveal functions like a spotlight flipping on. It's like the room finally knows where to look. And if you're someone who watches dramas for mood, this pilot is very intentional about mood shifts. There's a sleek, almost sterile confidence early on, then the breakup brings in emotional acidity, then the gala pours warm gold over everything like it's trying to seduce you into forgetting the pain. It's like the show is saying, yes, it hurts, but look how pretty it is. That's honest in a dark way. That's how rich environments often operate. They aestheticize discomfort. They hide rot under polish. Here's a rehook you might not expect. What if the most important character in episode 1 isn't Arthur or Anya, but the audience inside the story? The crowd at the gala, the social circle around Serena, the invisible family members pressing on Anya. Because those people are the true antagonist force, collective judgment. The fear of being talked about. The fear of being seen as weak. That's what drives the character's choices. Arthur doesn't just reveal himself for fun, he reveals himself to control the narrative. Anya doesn't just offer marriage for drama, she offers it to survive the narrative others are writing for her. In that sense, the show is about storytelling itself, who gets to write your identity. That's why the pilot's dialogue feels like everyone is being overheard. Because in their world, everyone is. Now, let me address something I can already hear some critics saying, this is just capitalism romance. And, yes, it is. But that doesn't automatically make it shallow. It just means the emotional stakes are expressed through money and status rather than through, like, a small-town bakery misunderstanding. Different genre language. Same human needs. Belonging, autonomy, recognition, safety, desire. The pilot translates those needs into bids, gala optics, strategic alliances. If you hate that language, you'll bounce. If you enjoy that language, the pilot is fluent. And for fans of these kinds of dramas, fluency matters. A show can have all the tropes you love and still be bad if it doesn't speak the language with conviction. Episode 1 speaks it with conviction. The $100 billion number is insane. But it's delivered like a statement of worldview, not a random flex. The CEO reveal is familiar, but it's staged like a social earthquake, not a cheap twist. The breakup is convenient for the plot, but it's played with enough sting to feel like a real bruise, not just a checkbox. That's why my stance, overall, is love. Not, this is perfect. Love in the way you love a show that knows exactly what it wants to be and executes its fantasy with enough craft that you don't feel embarrassed to be enjoying it. And since we're in the final stretch of the script emotionally, I want to get even more specific about what made me love it, because, I loved it, is meaningless if you can't tell someone what they'll actually feel while watching. You'll feel the thrill of audacity early. Anya proposing a fake marriage isn't whispered, it's offered like a blade. You'll feel the shock laugh of the $100 billion upgrade, because it's so extra you almost can't process it, and then you realize the show wants you to stop processing and start feeling. You'll feel a small, surprising ache during the Serena breakup, because even if you don't care about Serena, you care about the moment a confident person gets emotionally blindsided. You'll feel that delicious social satisfaction at the gala when Arthur's identity flips the room like a coin. And you'll feel the dangerous sweetness of new life together, because it sounds like escape, even though you know escape always comes with a bill. That's the pilot's emotional arc: thrill, shock, sting, satisfaction, seduction. It's a very engineered experience. And I'm not saying that like it's bad. Engineered can still be art if it's done with taste. Taste is a huge factor here. The show's taste is glossy, yes, but not cheap. The production design doesn't look like random wealth props thrown at a set. It looks curated. The gala isn't just big room with fancy people. It's lit and staged to feel like a social machine. The plane isn't just plane. It's framed as a confessional booth with seatbelts. Those choices matter. They make you trust the show. And when you trust a show, you're willing to follow it into more ridiculous plot territory because the craft is carrying you. Now, let's be fair, if you're someone who requires realism, the $100 billion bid will pull you out hard. And I get that. It's not just unrealistic, it's mythic. It's superhero money. And superhero money changes the entire tension equation, because it implies Arthur can do almost anything. The only way that works is if the drama leans into the idea that the only real battlefields are emotional and social. If it tries to create suspense around whether he can fund something, it'll be laughable. Episode 1 seems to understand that by making money a gesture, not a question. So as long as the show keeps treating money as character expression rather than plot obstacle, it can stay compelling. Also, the show needs to avoid overusing the public humiliation followed by public reversal beat. It's satisfying once. It's thrilling twice. It's exhausting the fifth time. The pilot uses it efficiently. Arthur gets humiliated by Serena, then he reverses the room at the gala. That's a clean one too. If the show keeps repeating that exact rhythm, it'll start to feel like a playlist on loop. The best way to keep it fresh is to reverse who gets the moment. Give Anya a room flip. Give her a reveal that belongs to her. Give her a power reversal that isn't borrowed from Arthur's status. Episode 1 gives her the defense moment, which is a smaller version of that. I want bigger. Because I'm going to say something blunt, if the drama is smart, Anya should eventually be the one people underestimate the most. Not Arthur. Arthur being underestimated is fun, but it's almost too easy because the reveal is built into the premise. Anya being underestimated is more interesting because it's not about a title, it's about capability. Watching her outmaneuver a system that thinks it owns her would be genuinely satisfying in a way that's less shallow than, surprise, I'm rich. And the pilot hints she has that potential. Here's another surprising thing I appreciated: episode 1 doesn't try to make the leads morally pure. Arthur's $100 billion move is not framed as altruism. It's framed as power. Anya's fake marriage offer is not framed as a romantic gesture. It's framed as survival. That moral ambiguity is good. It makes them feel like adults, not fairy tale dolls. And adult characters make for better drama because their choices have shadows. Now, if you're asking me, as a viewer, what I'm most worried about going forward, it's not plot twists. It's tonal drift. Shows like this can start grounded in emotion and then drift into pure flex compilation. Or they can start fun and then drift into heavy melodrama that feels like it's punishing the characters rather than challenging them. Episode 1 has a good balance of sting and sparkle. I want it to keep that balance. I want it to keep the bruises without losing the fun. I also want the show to keep its sense of rhythm. The pilot's rhythm is sharp: build tension, cut to impact, hold on reaction, then escalate. That rhythm creates addiction. But addiction without depth burns out. The show needs to start layering. It needs to start paying off emotional setups with consequences that last longer than a scene. Serena's breakup can't just be a motivation for Arthur to be flashy, it needs to change him. Anya's desperation can't just be a premise, it needs to haunt her. The gala reveal can't just be a MIC drop, it needs to complicate how people approach them. That's the difference between a pilot you love and a series you remember. And because this is the part where, normally, I'd give you the final verdict and recommendation, I'm going to do it now in the cleanest way possible, without pretending this is a morally profound masterpiece or a guilty pleasure you should hide in your drawer. I loved Step Back. I'm the Hidden King episode 1. I loved it because it's confident, fast, glossy, and emotionally sharper than it has to be. It takes familiar tropes and executes them with enough precision, especially in the plane negotiation, the Serena breakup sting, and the gala CEO reveal, that I felt both entertained and genuinely curious about what the characters will become when the initial adrenaline wears off. If you're a newcomer who wants a drama that hooks hard in the first episode, gives you spectacle, gives you chemistry built on friction, and doesn't waste time getting to the, oh, is that guy, satisfaction, you should absolutely try it. If you're a fan of secret identity power reversals and strategic romance, you're basically the target audience, and episode 1 is going to hit the exact buttons you came for. If you're a critic who dislikes mythic money, hates convenience, and needs realistic corporate logic and slow emotional build, this might not be your show. You may find the scale too absurd and the momentum too compressed. And that's fair. The pilot is not apologizing for its fantasy. It's leaning into it. For me, the deciding factor will be whether the show keeps Anya's agency intact and forces Arthur to grow beyond control as love. If it does, we could get a story that's not just addictive, but actually resonant. If you watched episode 1, tell me what grabbed you more, the playing off attention, Serena's cold breakup, or the gala reveal when the room finally understood who Arthur was. And if you want more drama reviews with an actual point of view, subscribe to Bongo Gaming and stick around, because I'm not done talking about the kind of shows that make you say, "This is ridiculous," while you click next episode anyway. Because the best dramas aren't always the ones that are realistic. They are the ones that know exactly what feeling they are chasing, and chase it without blinking.